If you didn't already know, SoloQ can often be quite a bit of a nightmare, and I thought it would be worthwhile to go over a few bad habits that I see a lot of players commonly committed to. Essentially, these all come down to two common denominators: selfishness and laziness. The first of these bad habits is insta-locking characters. The fundamental reason I chose Sage as my main was because in my many years playing video games, it's become quite clear that the large majority of players, in any game, prefer the role of fragger as opposed to a support type role. I recognize the demand and try to meet it by choosing the less popular but equally necessary roles. I simply want to give my team the best chance for success. I really don't see any kind of valid reason for virtually anyone to insta-lock characters other than selfishness, laziness, or just a blatant disregard. If my team needs a healer, I'll play a healer. If my team needs an initiator, I'll initiate. If you're only comfortable with one character, class, or role, then you should really be practicing a second or third in unrated before you indulge yourself in ranked matches. I don't think I'm the only one who has wanted to play Jett and has had to re-queue several times over simply because people refuse to play any other character. In a team game, consideration for your team should be priority over consideration for yourself. Not only that, you only have to gain by expanding your horizons, depthening your perspective, and becoming a more well-rounded player. You can probably guess what I'm going to say in regards to communication. This is another pretty common circumstance in virtually any team-based game. Comms serve a greater benefit than I think a lot of the community credits it for. It makes no sense to me why people disregard such a simple benefit like communication. You can pick up a cheap set of earbuds with an inline mic for literally a couple of dollars at the dollar store, so I don't think cost is really an issue, especially if you can afford a PC. Reading a lot of comments on this issue, it seems the problem that most people have is a sensitivity to feedback and our negative arousal to what can be considered as toxic behavior. But we all learn at a very early age about sticks and stones and about how words can't hurt you. Working in customer service, I learned how to interface with even the most rude and obtuse patrons, and as someone who spent a great deal of their life as an introvert, I can only attribute this habit to laziness, a reluctance to develop interpersonal social skills. And in a social setting where communication can often be paramount, it just isn't an acceptable habit. The amount of times I've died with no follow-up or punishment from teammates in close proximity is truly staggering in such a team-oriented game. I can understand a player's reluctance to have faith or trust in the virtually random players they've been queued up with, given that the quality of players from the SoloQ pool is often quite poor. But it's really no excuse, and I think what needs to be understood is that you've got to play the cards you're dealt. If you won't take initiative for whatever reason, be it a trust issue or another player's reluctance, securing a win becomes that much less likely. You'll rarely ever reap palpable rewards if you're unwilling to take appropriate risks. I often find myself inadvertently being the first to enter a site or initiating an engagement when it really isn't my place to do so. Not so much because I'm impatient or because I maintain an aggressive playstyle, quite the opposite actually, but because the majority of players refuse to take proper initiative. As a Sage main, this is considerably more frustrating when those teammates are duelists, whose role it is to be at the forefront. And in a duelist-saturated meta, you might see why this is problematic. The best example of this is the timid Jett main who buys a shorty for the first few rounds, which are arguably the most important rounds, who leaves their team hanging so that they can purchase an operator, the only weapon they show courage with, if even that, because their priority is to get as many kills as possible, rather than setting their team up for success and focusing on the objective, which is obviously planting and defusing the bomb. Having a lurker is a great way to throw the enemy team off balance and secure rounds, but all too often do I see people lurking as a tactic of self-preservation they utilize to avoid face-to-face confrontations with the enemy team. An example of this would be lurking down long while the enemy team is entering the site through short on defense or vice versa, or avoiding the sites you think the enemy will undertake. Letting the enemy onto a site and giving them ample opportunity to plant the spike is a clear mistake that I don't think anyone agrees isn't. This also plays into playing your own life, but thought it deserved its own timestamp because of how prevalent I find this habit to be. It's easy to feel like or pretend that you're doing your part when you have the most or some of the most kills on your team, and conversely, it seems a lot of people don't realize that a lot of these kills are at their expense, which is why I think that a disproportionate amount of players get away with it and continue to employ it. This is essentially just passing the buck or shifting the burden, rather than tackling the threat cooperatively, let alone efficiently. This is not a habit that considers the team's best interest. Prioritizing kills over the objective is a great way to lose high kill games. In most cases, kills should be earned rather than scavenged. This is another habit I find duelists guilty of more often than any other role, which I find ridiculous when there's a dedicated role for these types of plays. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that I brought some sort of insight into your next matches. I'm now streaming Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and occasionally on Saturday or Sunday. Check out my stream schedule for exact times, and feel free to join our Discord from the links in the description below.